that's going to blow up or whatever. I have no idea how many of those there are, but I'm hoping that council will pass this, and let's begin to find something that will work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Any questions? Okay, Councillor Sonnenberg, thank you.
I'll certainly support this. However, I'm afraid it's a battle we might never win. We cap one well, increases the pressure on another one, and they're just going to keep blowing. And I don't know what the ultimate solution is going to be, but I don't know. Ms. Robinson, can you comment on that? That if we cap one and another one's just going to spew forth?
Through the mayor to council, understand the concerns with respect to that. This is a little bit, all of the gas wells, it's a little bit difficult. It's not quite as simple as plug one, it's just going to happen in somewhere else. There's some significant geographic or formations underneath the ground that affect where it's going to come up. To be clear, this well was historically plugged. It was properly plugged back when it was actually plugged. I believe it was the 50s? 56. The method of plugging a well back in 1956 is significantly different than what we're doing now. And that's causing some of the problems. So it's not necessarily a case that if you plug it here, it's going to show up somewhere else. We're not even sure that it's actually the former well that's actually leaking. This could simply be an unfortunate coincidence where we have a plugged well on our property and it's just naturally bubbling up through a fracture in the ground somewhere else. Because we can't actually see anything, we're not really sure what's going on. And the reason we can't see anything is because it was plugged, so it was removed from the surface, so we can't see where the well used to be. So it's not quite as simple as just if we plug it in one spot, it's going to show up somewhere else. There's also active gas wells, not on our property, but there are wells that are still producing.
Nothing further. It was moved by Geisen, seconded by Oliver, that this CAO report 1826 be received as information. The county council will instruct the GM of Health and Social Services and the GM of Community Services to take the appropriate steps to contract with Bradco Drilling, Inc., or its equivalent, to obtain data within the hot zone area found at 1925 Forestry Farm Road. And that council exempt staff from the quotation and tendering procedures for goods and services outlined in the Norfolk County Policy ECS02 in accordance with the single source and emergency purchase provisions during the procurement process. And finally, that council further approved Bradco Drilling, Inc., which will coordinate with Global GPR Services, Inc. as a subcontractor to perform the work as the single source supplier of ground penetrating radar services pursuant to section 4.8.4 of the purchasing policies. Discussion on this resolution. Those in favor? It's carried, and I want to say to Mr. CAO and staff, thank you for walking that report in so we can move ahead with this. This well is not going away. It's been around. We got to move on. So I do appreciate, and council appreciates, bringing that forward. You may, sir.
There will be a lot of people when we finally get it in the newspaper who are saying at least council is doing something. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
well Mr. Mayor, Mr. County Manager, thank you.
Well said. On to bylaws. It has been moved by Councillor Sonnenberg, seconded by Councillor Oliver, that bylaws 19Z 2018, bylaws 24Z 2018, bylaw 38Z 2018, bylaw 42Z 2018, bylaw 43Z 2018, and bylaw 2018-55 to bylaw 2018-64 inclusive be passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and affixed with the corporate seal. Councillor Height.
Can you separate D so I can go out there?
Say again.
D, the item I declared earlier.
You have declared a conflict. You'd like to leave?
Good idea.
It's your call.
I
You had
declared
a
it earlier.
conflict on one of these bylaws.
D. 38-Z 2018.
Yeah, let me find 38. There it is. Oh, in here, 38Z 2018. I'm going to remove that. And then we'll do that separately, and you can leave. She got to come back. Okay? You're not going outside. No, that's not going to happen. Oh, some people do anything for smoke, I'll tell you. I'm not going to reread it, but Sonnenberg and Oliver have moved it, and 38Z 2018 has been removed. We'll deal with that separately. Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just before we call the question, I do want to make one comment, if I could, on bylaw 2018-55, which is the one relating to PD 13. I don't know whether any other councillors received feedback from citizens on this one or not, but I did, and there's two clauses in the bylaw, Mr. Mayor, that I think I'll just mention to council, and then perhaps the next time there's a PD 13, which is September of 2019, still could be a very busy one because it's going to be warm weather, we may have to rethink it. And those two clauses, Mr. Mayor, are number 7, whereby the Port Dover kinsman requested and was given permission to start camping on Wednesday. Council will remember I raised a bit of a red flag on that. I don't know whether that's why I got a call afterwards or not, but at least a couple of calls regarding that. Why does it have to now become a 3-day event when it was always a 1-day event? And the other clause, Mr. Mayor, that's kind of related to that is number 20, whereby the Port Dover kinsmen have requested and have been given permission to open their beer tent at 11 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. They're the only ones that asked to open in the morning on Thursday. The others have requested 4 or 6 p.m. on Thursday. But I must admit, Mr. Mayor, that one seems a bit excessive in my view as well. So I'm just raising those red flags. One of these days we may have to start curtailing the length of time that the event is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Speak to the beer tent one. Last year they did open at 11 o'clock as well.
Anything further on these bylaws? Not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 5 minutes. This motion is that bylaw 38Z 2014 be passed and affixed the corporate seal. I'll need a mover. Councillor Black. Seconder. Thank you. Councillor Wells. Again, Black and Wells, bylaw 38Z 2014, passed and affixed with the corporate seal. Discussion? Councillor Black?
I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask, but I guess you'll let me know. And it's a question through you to, I think, our CAO. I'm really concerned about the enforcement of this bylaw and in relationship to LPRCA. And I know I've asked this question before about LPRCA approving permits, and it's their right to do it. But what it's doing, and my concern is, it's going to be costing Norfolk County more money because those people may go ahead and build, and then Norfolk County has to come along and tell them, sorry, you can't do that. We have to enforce them, make them take it down. It's going to cost Norfolk County taxpayers money in time, energy, staffing, and all those things. So I'm wondering, through you, Mr. Mayor, to our CAO, if it would be appropriate to have a discussion with LPRCA manager or the board itself to explain that this, by those approvals, and it will end up costing Norfolk County a lot of money. So I wondered if you could comment on that.
Well, Counselor Black, I will take a stab at that. You remember a few weeks back, we had a discussion about LPRCA approving. And I believe the applicant had put in the application in 2016, but it was approved after the April 16, 18 decision of the OMB. And I called after that meeting the next morning, I called LPRCA and I talked to the acting general manager, and her name escapes me at the moment. Judy, that's the one. I talked to Judy, and she told me that that would certainly be a discussion at the next LPRCA meeting, which she told me, I'm just going off the top of my head, June the 6th. Because I told her it's not really fair to anybody to pay for an application, get approval at point A, when in fact, you know that at point B, it's not going to conform with what we have here with our bylaw, even though you do not need a building permit. It still is not permitted. So she certainly said, so I don't know whether it was discussed at June the 6th, whether I see our chairman putting his hand up, perhaps he would respond. I don't know if you have anything else. I'll turn it over to Councillor. Please jump in if you know anything.
Yes, Mr.
to
Mayor.
add.
We did have 2 hearings scheduled for something similar. I believe one was a change house. But the one, the applicants never did show, so it was deferred to a future meeting, and the other one was withdrawn. So there was no hearing, there was no discussion about it. However, a lot of the board of directors of the LPRCA, they felt that because there was no bylaws such as we're dealing with tonight, that it still hadn't kicked in, is the way a lot of the board members felt. It's only here before us now to receive approval, although everybody says it actually happened on, sometime in
April 16.
But we didn't see any paperwork on it, right, other than the OMB hearing. But we were told that a bylaw was being prepared. So I guess my question is this bylaw that we're dealing with tonight, is it being drafted by the Ontario government, or has it been drafted by our bylaw people? I know I'm asking a question, but I think down the road, Councillor Black, I think you're going to see some different thinking on this, being that now we have the paperwork.
Mr. CAO?
I think this is one of those moments where we can all come together and just really appreciate the value of lawyers.
No, don't say again. No. I think I heard something about appreciate. Go ahead.
And how lucky Norfolk County is to have 2 on staff. Just bask. It feels so good.
Get on with it, sir. Did you have something you wish to share? Who's your number one fan?
Please bask. The bylaw that is before you this evening is merely the municipal codification of what the Ontario Municipal Board, as it then was, did order. So on April 16th, we had the law as it is and now has been since April 16th. So with respect, it's not actually the municipal bylaw that's the most important authority in this instance. It's the OMB because it's ruled directly on point. That being, and Norfolk County staff were aware of that because they had access to 2 extremely high-quality lawyers, which I don't think the LPRCA has directly on staff. But in all seriousness, tonight what you're doing is codification, so it's taking a case or case law, right, the OMB ruling, and it's making it a officially recognized reality here at the county level. And the reason to do that is because in 30 years, half of us in this room will be dead and the other half will have forgotten about it. But whichever fabulous lawyers we have on staff then will be able to look back and see. It's for future generations. Right now, everyone in this room knows how the OMB ruled, and that's the law as it is. The reason we should codify it, this is for the future, to create institutional memory and proper public recognition of what happened. That's why we're doing this.
Councillor Brunton and then Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, and I think Councillor Clemens explained one of the issues I apologize, I thought the bylaw was more important, but thanks for the clarification. My question is, and I'm sure other councillors have received some of the correspondence, emails. I guess there's a lot of questions being asked about legally non-conforming. Is that the proper wording? And pardon? Legal non-conforming, okay. And I'm wondering also, didn't we not discuss a while back, and this is through you to Chris, Mayor Luke, definitions that our staff have to come back with precise definitions for some of these things? Day use, for example, those definitions have to be clearly identified in the bylaw, or in the zoning bylaw. And that the public or persons can object to those, I guess. Am I correct on that?
Through the mayor, they're much more abundantly clear in the LPAT decision.
Okay.
Looking at page 189 of your agenda. So we know that's what we're proceeding with enforcement. There's active enforcement underway, and that's all we can say at this point.
Okay, so, but is there a definition for this legal non-conforming? Is that in our bylaw?
Offhand, I don't know if we specifically define it, but certainly it's a legal term that Mr. Cribbs and certainly our county solicitor are able to provide a much better definition than I certainly could.
Have you seen some of the emails from different parties, or perhaps you're not?
I have not been privy to those, but I know there are emails in circulation.
Yeah. Well, I certainly have received them, and I guess that's the question people are asking. If they've been on these lots for years and had trailers or whatever, docks, or I assume any of these structures, are they classed as legal non-conforming? Who answers that question?
I do, and the answer is no.
Where do they go from there if they want to challenge that?
With respect, that's an inappropriate question to ask, both in public or in general to this corporation.
Well, all right.
We understand, we are not here to provide legal advice to those who are adverse in interest to the Corporation of Norfolk County.
Okay, all right. I guess that's their decision they have to make then, correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Black?
Just wasn't quite finished after hearing everyone. I just wanted to say thank you very much for letting me know that, Mr. Mayor, that you've been proactive in contacting the authority, and that's the information that you received. And thank you to our CAO for his explanation, and to the chairman of LPRCA for also responding. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further discussion? You've heard the motion. Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. That's it for our bylaws. I got that one for you as well. And before confirming bylaw, we have two other items. I am on page 283. I see that Councillor Height has not, his 5 minutes aren't up yet. So he has a notice of motion. If it's okay with council, I'm going to go to other business, then back to that. Councillor Columbus?
Mr. Mayor, did we finish the communication items?
Give me a second. I haven't been on
This
top of my game
Elson
tonight.
Stewart of the anniversary party, did we do that one at the Junior Farmers Building?
Yes, we did.
We did? Okay. Thank you.
Yes. But if I skipped it, I wouldn't have been surprised tonight. I seem to be low gear tonight. My apologies. Let's go to other business, and then we'll go to the notice of motion. So I'm going to start with staff first. Oh, you've been awful quiet tonight, Mr. Johnson. I'll start with you first.
Just being consistently quiet. I have nothing to add tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Baird. Mr. CAO.
I've spoken enough, and I'm just still basking in being a lawyer.
Let's go to this side. Lee Robinson.
Through the mayor to council, I'm pleased to advise that the schedule is on track for the work at the Long Point Causeway Bridge. In fact, the rig matting has arrived today and the contractor is starting to place them already. So things are on track and we're hoping that we'll have the weight restriction off as soon as possible.
Very good, thank you. And under other business, I was going to ask for an update, so in response to your information, I want to say thank you to you and staff, and I know there are other departments involved in getting this thing. It's good to see people on site, putting it back together. Ms. Miranda? Pardon? Sarah Townsend, thank you for being here tonight. Nothing tonight? Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Black, please.
Well, I don't know if I should bring this up or not, but it's, everybody's been hearing about it, and it's how our Prime Minister has been treated by, the President to the south. And there is a lot of reaction, and I'm wondering if our staff are thinking about this and how we, as a corporation, might deal with this ourselves in terms of purchasing policy, that sort of thing. I've heard that there are some other municipalities are thinking about this, and I'm not suggesting that we do anything. I'm just wondering if staff have actually thought about it or if it's worth discussing at all. So that's I guess a question through you to our CAO.
I think it's fair to say that your senior staff, at least, are far more focused on the recent provincial election and its likely great impact upon future municipal operations, and that we think that will have a significant, we're not sure what they are just yet, but a number of significant impacts upon the Corporation of Norfolk County now and into the future. With respect to the trade agreements, as we speak, they remain in place. I think that substantively and ultimately overall, they're going to remain in place or ultimately be replaced by slightly renamed, repackaged, but more or less the same thing. There's no congruence or alignment of the stars in which I think we would ever advise to make substantive changes to our purchasing policies, which right now say we don't discriminate against companies based on Canadian, American, or Mexican origin, and then with another trade agreement with European origin. But basically, we do end up discriminating against the rest of the world where we don't have trade agreements. As a practical matter, though, most of the things a municipality buys are construction products. They're aggregates and the like. And there's just no way to make an economical case. You can't bring, I don't know if they mine salt in Mexico, but you can't economically bring salt from Mexico here to spread on the highways. There's no, the economics of that don't work, and you can't make bricks on the far side of the planet and bring them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So almost all that purchasing ends up, if not local, then at least regional anyway, regardless of whether or not you have a trade agreement. And that's been our reality. When you look at the last 30, 40, 50 RFPs we've had, there are always companies in reasonable proximity because they just self-select out. If you're in Ottawa, you're not going to send a construction crew down here. So they don't bid on work in Norfolk, and companies from Norfolk don't bid on construction projects in Ottawa. It's not that there's a law against it, there's just economics don't work that way. It's not impossible that we get someone from upstate New York, or maybe Ohio, or maybe Michigan, but a trade spat's temporary. We hope that long-lasting friendship and ties between the communities remain in place, and so even if the trade agreements go up in flames, I wouldn't change it. I think it's a nice gesture, but the practical reality is we more or less purchase the vast majority of the things we buy locally or somewhat regionally because that's who bids, because that's what's economical.
I do appreciate that, and I just thought it was a sad day for relationships between the two countries, and yet the people that live here in Canada and the people that live in the United States, we are completely interlinked. I mean, my best friend lives in Cleveland, Ohio, so it certainly wouldn't stop me from going to see him. But thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I have a few on my list here tonight. As you'll see in our agenda, we had a lot of minutes from several committees. The one that I never see is the Police Services Board. I know I can go and download it, but it should be in our agenda packages. We had the police come last week. I think we were a little bit blindsided by some of the stuff that we heard. And I really feel that, they're $13 million of our budget. We should probably read those minutes. I'd like to see them in there. If you look in your information package, you'll see Long Point Region Conservation Authority, we spend $1 million. And it'd be nice to actually have your finger on the pulse for that, as opposed to finding it.
May I respond to that? I'm not suggesting that isn't a possibility. I do know that as the newest, well, fairly new member of the Police Services Board, that we do not deal, at least we have not in the year and a half I've been there, with the budget of with the OPP contract at Police Services. Councilor Oliver, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall ever dealing with any part of the budget.
Mr. Mayor, we do in a sense. There is usually a budget put on the table from the OPP to the board, so we do see that. We don't really have any control over it or any ability not to implement it, but we do see it.
We do see the budget
PSP.
before it
Yes, we do.
comes to council?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so just a comment.
Yeah, just a second. Andy, go ahead. I'll get back to you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think one of the aspects with that is that we wouldn't want to present it on a council agenda because they aren't a body of council. And one of the things that we do in time intend to do is to try to get rid or get away from the information package because it's really kind of an area of ambiguity where it's something that's not actually before this body and it's just being circulated. So I think there are things like the library board minutes, cemetery boards, the police services boards, where we could look to address, but there might be a better way of maybe simply encouraging those bodies to put their minutes online so that everybody in the public, not just council, can access them, and to do it kind of across the board. But I don't have a problem having discussions with the secretaries of those groups to see what we can do and make some headway in that respect.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm receiving some calls from some people that are a bit upset with council, and I don't know that we should be taking the heat for it, but the Good Bread Company, council will recall we approved some development things for them, and their customers are unhappy that they can't seem to get ahead with that facility. They were looking to move into another building, and as I understand it, they're all being tied up in administrative red tape.
If I may, if you would like me to respond, I will. And you're talking about the conversion of the church and that property. I can only tell you this, I have been a little bit involved with that. And I can tell you this, that I have been dealing with emails and phone calls directly from the owner, Rick. And I can tell you that the 4 main times that he has called me or emailed me concerning delays, it has been with the site plan, and it has not been a site plan that has been sitting on planning's desk. It has been with the consultant, and every time, 4 for 4 that I've been involved, the site plan, our staff have been eagerly awaiting for the site plan revisions to come back to planning. I don't know if Mr. Baird wants to add anything to that. And again, I'm not here to point fingers at a consultant. All I can tell you that in all 4 incidences, planning was waiting for revisions as it related to a number of things like drainage and other things. Mr. Baird, anything to add to that? Am I off key here?
No, Mr. Mayor, you're bang on. There's a 4th submission that's being circulated with final comments. It's that close to being finalized. I know it's been a very challenging process for the applicant, but be assured that your staff are doing absolutely everything we can to move them forward. We want to get into that bread too, so.
Is it just the list of things that are just too hard or too much for him to get everything done in a timely manner?
Through the mayor, there's just some final items that need to be satisfied, and it's shown on the final drawing, so we can stamp it approved, and he's done.
Okay.
And Councillor Height, like one of the issues I was directly involved with was drainage. And I just want to say that I really appreciate Mr. Posavad's patience. And I can tell you I've toured the church where he currently is doing his not doing the baking, it's done over in the shop, but he's doing the preparation and the, I guess you call it the dough. The facility, when it's finished, is going to be an incredible attraction, not just as a bakery tea shop, but as a tourist attraction. It's going to be remarkable. I think when he's got that finished, it'll be an eye-opener. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you for that. And last but not least, I missed the downtown, what was it, the walk? What was it? Imagination Walk, that was it. I missed that last week because I had work to do, but I did manage to go for a drive over the weekend, and because I thought, well, I know Simcoe, I've been here every day, right, or at least once a week. So I drove out to Grand Bend and Godrich just to be able to compare the two and see what works for them and what isn't working for us, as a matter of fact. So on my way home, I drove through the town of Seaforth. I don't know if you guys have ever been there or not. It's population 2,300. You'll never believe what they have there, Mr. Mayor. They have a sign, a big sign. It says Seaforth, right? Then I drive into Simcoe. I see a little blue sign. The same blue sign that's been there for 3.5 years that we discussed having a sign in Simcoe. Now, the sign is more than just a sign and an entrance marker. It is branding, okay? Branding. The health department came up with a new logo. That's part of the branding initiative, okay? Branding is what businesses use to separate themselves. It's who you are, who you want to be, and who you want people to perceive you as, okay? That sign coming into Simcoe, what that tells me, bland. That's what it is, bland. It's a blue and white, boring sign. So one of the things to downtown revitalization, or what you want to show people, is more than just a blue and white sign. You know, I don't know how, but we need to move some things forward at council to get things done here as far as the downtown parts go. And I know that we're moving ahead with some things. I spoke with Mr. Baird, and maybe he'll give us an update after on some of the initiatives he's working on. But one of the things is just fixing that part. Okay, so while I went into Godrich, and I parked down by their beach, fortified, shoreline protected, up the ping pong, I might add, and there was a boardwalk there. And believe it or not, and I know you guys are going to think I'm crazy right now, there were barbecues in the park. People could use them. This has been brought up before at council too. So people were enjoying themselves in this park. There was even a Rotary International overhead sign over the driveway with their logo on it, branding, because that that club has that specific brand all across the world. Okay, so now I know you guys are going to think that Councillor Height has spent too much time at the Burning Kill Winery before coming into council right now, but in the middle of all of this was a water treatment plant managed by Veolia. So don't we have something similar like that in Dover? But I don't know that we have a boardwalk. Lee, maybe you could comment. I believe we're going to fence off that area, actually.
Through the mayor to council, the water treatment facility in Dover is the one that we've had multiple discussions about with respect to the public accessing. That one. I'm not sure. It's a very narrow piece of property. There isn't much room to do much with the property, and people sort of walk down to the edge of the beach from that. The wastewater facility isn't on the lake.
Right. But this was at the water facility, and it wasn't a very big stretch in between from it to the lake, because they don't run a lot of lines, I'm sure. Maybe 50 feet, I would say, right? But, you know, and that frees up things for people to do more. All right, so sometimes I think at council we're always so reactive that we don't look ahead enough. And sometimes the old saying goes, you have to spend money to make money. And that's one of the things that I haven't seen a lot of here. That we don't really take that initiative, like to move money into new ventures. And of course, we would have to make an educated decision to do that. And, you know, we have economists and everybody else who would give us that information that we would need. You know, and one of the things that I've been thinking about, we know our community improvement program, the funding is empty. We've spent all of that. It was a huge uptake, and I appreciate all of that, that's for sure. Now, I'm wondering if we couldn't waive permit fees for certain areas, like the downtown BIAs. To make that decision, we would need information on how many permits actually get taken out in those districts. Because for all we know, maybe there's only a few $100s worth of permits. Maybe it's what drags everything down, because if you have to bring something up to code, today's code, you could end up paying $30,000, $40,000 just for adding a wall because other spots in your building aren't up to code. All right, so I don't know, Mr. Barrett, if you would have any information on, or would you be able to extrapolate the data on BIA area permit fees?
Through the mayor, the fees that, there's a lot of legislation that goes around with BIAs, how you establish boundaries. There's a process there. Mr. Black is probably one of the more informed members because of his involvement with OBIA. I'd have to do a little bit more research, but if you pose some specific questions, I'd be glad to research that and share that with all of council. I think it would be important. You're right. There are a lot of communities doing some great things that just need slight tweaks to get full benefit.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see what, like, say, the Delhi BIA area and the Simcoe BIA area, what they've taken out in permits in the last little while as far as the fees go. Because it's just revenue we wouldn't take in if we waived those fees, right? And maybe that, if we gave it a time limit, would make people want to do some more things to some of their buildings. All right, so that's all I'm saying. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to report that the Strawberry Festival and Mustang Car Show is going to be held on Saturday in the town of Delhi. Hopefully, if anybody gets some time, you can attend that. And I hear our county CAO mentioning many times about the virtues of a lawyer. I just want him to know that at one time on the Township of Delhi, I sat on council with 3 lawyers, and they never could agree on anything. I don't know how many hours we spent debating things sometimes. Anyway, just wanted to share that with you, Mr. Cripps. When you're sitting in that chair, it's different. You've got authority maybe, but when they're around the table, they couldn't agree on anything. Thank you.
You want me to thank him for that? Thank you, Councillor Columbus. Councillor Wells. Councillor Geisens, please. Nothing tonight. Councillor Sonnenberg.
Can I tell a lawyer joke?
It's getting dark out there.
Oh, I better not. Anyway, earlier tonight we dealt with a couple of drainage issues. And we had a gentleman here who lives in the sandy plain somewhere, and he says drainage isn't that important. Water just naturally seeps away through the sandy soil. Well, that's not the case in the eastern part of the county where I'm from. Tile drainage is very important to crop yields. And tile drainage drains into main drains. And without main drains being functional and open, tile drainage often can't be installed or work if it is installed. So I just want to emphasize how important these main drains are. And it's unfortunate that it takes so long for these drainage projects to be completed. You know, there's been great advances made in farming over the years, you know, through plant genetics, through fertilization, through different types of machinery and everything. Advancement in all areas. But the most important in heavy ground is drainage. You know, anytime anybody buys a farm, the first thing they do is tile it, because they know it'll pay back in no time at all. It's just very important. I just want to comment that it's unfortunate that it takes so long for these drainage projects to be completed, but our Public Works Department has explained why. It's a shortage of engineers mostly, but just want to emphasize the importance of drainage. I've seen yields in my lifetime double in my area, thanks mostly to advances in other areas, but mostly through drainage. Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Brunton?
Mayor Luke, a couple of quick questions here. One is through you to James. Do you have any idea, are we going to debenture for 2017? Is there any plans for that this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Brunton, I believe we're going to issue approximately 19 million in debentures next year. For 17, we're not issuing in 17. And even if we did issue in 17, by the time it's done and everything, it would be, sorry, you're confusing me with the dates already. So can you repeat your question, please?
Well, my understanding is we debentured 19 million for 2016 completions. I'll use that word. Right? We debentured 19 million for works completed up to the end of 2016. It's a year later, correct?
Correct. So yes, we had a number of projects identified in 2016, actually most of them related to roads, and we issued debentures for those. And
so I'm asking about what's coming up. I assume that was to the, I'll use the word, end of 16. You say debenture at the year after. I'm asking what might be debentured for 2017.
I would have to come back to you with an answer for that one.
Do you anticipate a when or any idea how much? No idea?
It's difficult to put together. It all depends on when the projects are completed. We can't issue debt until projects are completed.
Okay.
And so it all depends on that kind of schedule. And it also depends on if we receive grants that year. If we receive a grant for a certain project, we'll stick that on there instead of issuing debt. So it's a very difficult question to answer.
Usually I think it was around this time last year you did the up until the end of 16. So I'm curious to know what that might be. My next question, if I may, Mayor Luke, is through you to Lee. Lee, I know have we commenced the consultant study at all with the, I call it the lake-oriented water service? For like, I forget the proper title of that. Is that commenced at all?
The integration of the
Right.
water. I don't have a minute-by-minute update. It's pretty close, so I can follow up and get back to you.
So it hasn't been put out to engineering yet?
Oh, no, it has gone out to the engineering. I'm just not sure if if it's actually been all the way through the process and awarded, or if it's still in the bidding process.
For engineering?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And the last one was, I guess, the Waterford waste plant, waste treatment plant.
That will be here next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brunton. I don't think I missed anybody, no. I have nothing for this evening. I draw your attention to page 283, a notice of motions. Councillor Height has submitted this evening a notice of motion, which will be dealt with in motion form 2 weeks hence, applying water arrear charges to property owners. Councillor Height, certainly if you have any comments about this at this time, I'll entertain them, but we won't be debating or discussing your notice.
I'll wait.
You'll wait for 2 weeks, thank you, sir. Our confirming bylaw, it's been moved by Columbus, second by Sonnenberg, the bylaw 2018-65, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Norfolk County at this council meeting held on the 12th day of June 2018, be passed, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and affixed with the corporate seal. Those in favor, it's carried. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening.